The Battle of South Mountain, a crucial prelude to Antietam Civil War documentary. Location, Crampton's Gap, Turner's Gap, and Fox's Gap. Counties, Frederick County and Washington County, Maryland. Date, September 14, 1862. On September 14, 1862, Union forces under the command of Major General George B. McClellan confronted a divided Confederate army led by General Robert Lee at the Battle of South Mountain. Though the Union succeeded in forcing a tactical retreat and gaining control of the mountain passes, the victory came too late to prevent Lee from regrouping his forces. This engagement set the stage for the pivotal Battle of Antietam just 3 days later. How the Battle of South Mountain ended. Outcome: Union victory. By nightfall, General Lee ordered a withdrawal of his outnumbered Confederate forces from South Mountain, abandoning the key passes at Fox's Gap, Turner's Gap, and Crampton's Gap. Although a Union success, the delay allowed Lee to consolidate his forces and prepare for the significant confrontation at Antietam from September 16 to 18, 1862. Strategic context and the road to South Mountain. Following his triumph at the Second Battle of Manassas in late August 1862, General Robert Lee initiated an ambitious invasion of the North. His objectives were strategic: relieve pressure on Virginia, recruit new support in the border states, and deliver a decisive blow on Union soil that might prompt diplomatic recognition of the Confederacy by European powers. On September 4, Lee's Army of Northern Virginia crossed the Potomac River into Maryland, launching the Maryland Campaign. To secure his supply lines and eliminate Federal threats from the rear, Lee divided his army on September 9. He dispatched Lieutenant General Thomas Stonewall Jackson to seize Union garrisons at Harper's Ferry and Martinsburg, while Lieutenant General James Longstreet pushed further into western Maryland, threatening the border with Pennsylvania. However, a crucial intelligence breakthrough changed the course of events. On September 13, Union Major General George B. McClellan came into possession of Lee's lost Special Order No. 191, an accidental Union windfall that exposed the Confederate plan of movement. Realizing that Lee's forces were dangerously divided, McClellan acted with unusual speed, advancing on South Mountain to strike the Confederate positions defending the passes. Legacy of the battle. The Battle of South Mountain marked the first major engagement of the Maryland Campaign and underscored the strategic importance of the region's geography. While it was a clear Union tactical victory, McClellan's cautious advance failed to deliver a crippling blow to Lee's army. The stage was set for the bloodiest single day in American history at Antietam. Before the Battle of South Mountain, intelligence, opportunity, and the march toward conflict. On September 13, 1862, Union Major General George B. McClellan experienced a stroke of luck that would dramatically alter the course of the Maryland Campaign. A mislaid copy of Special Order No. 191, detailing General Robert Lee's strategic movements and objectives, fell into Union hands. Although the document was already 4 days old, it was still of immense value. McClellan quickly realized the significance of the intelligence. The Confederate Army was divided, with Lieutenant General Thomas Stonewall Jackson still behind schedule in his effort to capture Harper's Ferry. The town was surrounded but had not yet fallen. Lee's forces were scattered across vast stretches of Maryland countryside, exposing them to potential defeat in detail. Recognizing that a portion of Lee's army was isolated and vulnerable, McClellan seized the opportunity. He ordered a rapid advance toward the South Mountain Range, a natural barrier standing between the Union Army and Lee's fragmented forces. McClellan aimed to penetrate the mountain passes and strike before Lee could regroup. His movements set the stage for the Battle of South Mountain, a critical turning point in the Maryland Campaign and a prelude to the bloody confrontation at Antietam. During the Battle of South Mountain, a struggle for the passes. On September 14, 1862, the Union assault began in earnest across 3 critical mountain passes: Fox's Gap, Turner's Gap, and Crampton's Gap. Defending the first 2 was a single Confederate division of approximately 5,000 men under Major General D.H. Hill. Fox's Gap. The battle begins. At dawn, Union General Jacob D. Cox led the Kanawha Division of the 9 Corps in an assault on Confederate positions at Fox's Gap. His 3,000 troops, primarily Ohioans, clashed with Brig General Samuel Garland's North Carolinians, who were entrenched behind a stone wall. After intense fighting, Cox's men successfully overran the Confederate line, mortally wounding Garland in the process. Despite these gains, Confederate forces regrouped and managed to retain control of the western side of the gap by nightfall. Turner's Gap, fierce resistance on steep terrain. To the north, Major General Joseph Hooker's I Corps advanced up the rugged terrain near Frosttown and pressed hard against Turner's Gap. Divisions commanded by George G. Meade and John P. Hatch spearheaded repeated assaults on the Confederate northern flank. A particularly fierce exchange erupted along a cornfield fence line, where Hatch eventually broke through the defenses. However, the timely arrival of reinforcements from General James Longstreet stabilized the Confederate position. As darkness fell, Turner's Gap remained in Southern hands. Crampton's Gap, a decisive breakthrough. Meanwhile, at the southernmost pass, Major General Henry W. Slocum led a determined charge at Crampton's Gap. His division advanced directly up the slope, pushing back the Confederate defenders. Despite additional southern reinforcements, a second coordinated attack successfully drove the remaining Confederate forces down the western slope. By nightfall, Union troops had gained full control of Crampton's Gap. Confederate withdrawal. Although Confederate troops still held portions of Fox's and Turner's Gaps by the end of the day, General Robert E. Lee recognized the growing threat posed by the larger Union force. Realizing his positions were untenable and his army at risk of being overwhelmed, Lee ordered a full withdrawal from South Mountain overnight. By sunrise on September 15, 1862, all Confederate forces had retreated, relinquishing control of the mountain to the Union. Aftermath of the Battle of South Mountain, a tactical victory with strategic consequences. While the Battle of South Mountain ended in a Union tactical victory, it ultimately failed to achieve the decisive blow that Major General George B. McClellan had hoped for. The intense, day-long fighting on September 14, 1862, bought General Robert E. Lee the critical time he needed to regroup and reinforce his scattered Confederate forces. On September 15, just one day after the battle, Lieutenant General Thomas Stonewall Jackson completed his mission at Harper's Ferry, forcing the surrender of Union Colonel Dixon S. Miles and over 12,000 Federal troops. Jackson's swift and overwhelming victory not only eliminated a significant Union garrison but also secured vital supplies and munitions for the Confederacy. Leaving several divisions behind to hold Harper's Ferry, Jackson quickly began moving his troops toward Sharpsburg, Maryland, to rejoin Lee and Longstreet near Antietam Creek. By the time Union forces advanced again, Lee's army had largely reunited. Just 3 days after South Mountain, on September 17, 1862, the Battle of Antietam unfolded, the bloodiest single day in American military history. While South Mountain opened the door for Union advances into western Maryland, it ultimately served as a prelude to the much larger and deadlier confrontation that followed. Why did Robert E. Lee launch the Maryland campaign? In the late summer of 1862, Confederate General Robert E. Lee made a bold strategic decision. He would take the war beyond the borders of the Confederacy and carry it into the North. His objectives were multifaceted and ambitious. First, Lee sought to relieve pressure on Virginia, which had endured months of brutal campaigns and devastation. Moving into Maryland would shift the theater of war and give Southern farmers time to harvest their crops and recover. Second, Lee believed that Maryland, though a Union state, held considerable Confederate sympathies. By marching into Maryland, he hoped to inspire local support, attract new recruits, and encourage a broader uprising in the border states. Third, and most importantly, Lee aimed to achieve a decisive Confederate victory on Northern soil. Such a triumph, he believed, might force President Abraham Lincoln to reconsider the continuation of the war, especially if public pressure grew in the North. Furthermore, a major Southern victory might persuade European powers such as Britain and France to recognize the Confederacy as a legitimate nation, providing diplomatic and possibly military support. However, Lee's hopes were soon tested. His advance into Maryland led to the Battle of South Mountain on September 14, 1862, where Union forces under Major General George B. McClellan broke through the mountain passes. Though not a crushing defeat, the engagement delayed Lee's plans and set the stage for the Battle of Antietam 3 days later. Antietam proved tactically inconclusive but strategically forced Lee to abandon the campaign and retreat back into Virginia. Despite this setback, Lee remained committed to offensive strategy. Less than a year later, in the summer of 1863, he launched his second invasion of the North, culminating in the Battle of Gettysburg from July 1 to 3, 1863, the most famous and bloodiest battle of the Civil War. If you're passionate about the turning points of the American Civil War, subscribe to History Love for deeply researched narratives, expert insights, and full-length documentaries that bring history to life. Like, comment, and share to support quality educational content. Subscribe now to never miss a moment in history.